Zubin Mehta. Music has been his lifelong passion.
It is very important that one listens to one's inside. One has to know exactly what one is capable of. To conduct or to go through an experience of Tristan and Isolde is every evening when you conduct it, you have gone through a life's experience. Conducting is communication.
Now, a conversation with Zubin Mehta, hosted by Lee Cullum.
Mr. Mehta, you've had several great cities right at the center of your life. You've had New York and Los Angeles and Montreal and Jerusalem, where you've been music director, Vienna, where you learned music, and yet you said you always dream in Bombay, the city where you were born and grew up. What is it about Bombay that has such a hold on your imagination?
Well, I suppose the roots are very important. And since I left Bombay when I was 18 years old, and when I was in Bombay, I always dreamt of being in America because my father's education took place in New York. Always dreamt, meaning not in the realistic sense. But when I dream today, even if I dream of contemporary characters, they are always situated in my area of Bombay. I can't explain that.
You were there, of course, when India was independent in 1947. I think you were even in the parade stand when Lord Mountbatten left.
That's right.
What do you remember of those days? Was it an anxious time for you?
Not for me as a young teenager, but I certainly grew up in the spirit of India in those days. I was just telling a colleague the other day, we had to play God Save the Queen in Toronto a couple of days ago. I said, this is the tune that when I would have to listen to at the end of every movie in India, we would walk out.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
You left in anger, in protest.
The entire movie house would leave in protest, and the king, in those days, George VI, would be left standing alone on his horse. But that was the spirit of the day.
Yes.
We never saw a British Army unit marching by without shouting, "Quit India." Quit India became one word in those days. My house was a little bit away from the riots in Bombay, but there were continuous riots in those days, not only between Hindus and Muslims, but also between Indians and the British occupation.
Yes. And of course, throughout all this, your father was starting an orchestra. He started the first orchestra in Bombay that played Western music.
Yeah.
That can't have been easy. There wasn't an audience for Western music.
Well, there was, and later on it decreased. But there still is today a certain audience for Western music in the main cities, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, etc.
Of course, your father's parents never intended him to be a musician. How did he find his way to music?
Well, because he was always teaching himself to play the violin. He was initially taught by an Italian professor, but very little. He just sort of started developing himself. And later on, through Indian Parsi, my people are Parsis, charities, he was sent to America for 4 years, and he studied with what is recognized as the greatest violin teacher ever since the war, at least, Ivan Galamian.
You mentioned being a Parsi, and I've heard that Parsis believe that if you pursue a wrong idea in this life, then in the next life your soul will be condemned. Do you think that influenced him to leave tax collecting and go into music even though his parents opposed it?
No, I think he just, being a good son, did what was prescribed for him, but in his heart he was always a musician. He always practiced. He played chamber music at home. I remember him telling us that the great Russian ballerina Pavlova passed through Bombay on a ship, and the ship was docked miles away from the harbor, and he took this little boat and went to the ship and wanted to go on board just to shake hands with Pavlova.
And did he succeed?
Yes. And in those days, in the late 20s, a lot of the great musicians would pass through Bombay by ship, going either to Japan, Shanghai, or Australia, and they would stop in Bombay and give a few concerts. Heifetz did that. The great violinist Zimbalist, the father of the actor.
Yes.
Kubelik, the father of the conductor. A lot of, I don't think great pianists came, because probably there was no decent instrument in India in those days. But violinists certainly came through, and that encouraged him, of course. That he heard He heard already as a self-taught violinist Jascha Heifetz.
Of course, your parents didn't want you to go into music either, even though you'd been surrounded by music. You played with instruments, you helped your father with the orchestra, you were even the orchestra librarian, and yet they were determined you were going to be a doctor. How did you feel about that?
Well, that is a sort of a, that's the way the Parsi upper middle class bourgeois thinks, and this is still goes on. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like asking the Jewish grandmother how old her grandchildren are. And she says the doctor is 7 and the lawyer is 5. And that's exactly our condition in Bombay too. We are told, my son, my brother was told that he was going to be an accountant, and he did become a chartered accountant in England.
Did it have anything to do with the Hindu caste system? I know that musicians don't fare well in the Hindu caste system, and why your people are Parsi and not Hindu, were they influenced by the caste system?
Well, we are very influenced by the Hindus in all walks of life. This reincarnation theory that you just did before, that I'm suppose is from the Hindus. But no, we are not influenced by that caste system itself. In fact, we have no caste in our people. We have a couple of sects, but one is not higher than the other. We have a priest class and the working class, much like the Jews. Mm-hmm. The Cohens and the Levis.
You mentioned reincarnation. When you were born, I think your mother visited an astrologer and got a chart done on you, and the astrologer said that you would be a leader of a group, but he didn't know what kind of group. And he also said that the child born on this day will be changeable and overconfident and too sure of himself, and will need to learn moderation and judgment. Do you think that was a bum rap that he gave you even as a little infant?
If you ask people who know me, probably they wouldn't think it's a bum rap.
Oh, really? Of course, it's really not the thing to leave your parents when you are an Indian. Was it hard for you to leave India and go to Vienna? Did you feel you were doing something that was somehow against the tradition?
No, because my father had done that too. But coming to Vienna was really, for me, in any case, a culture shock. First of all, India to Europe is a culture shock gastronomically, language-wise. It's the first time I ever saw snow before. The entire mentality was so different. I can't even begin to tell you. But the greatest shock was hearing the Vienna Philharmonic.
Yeah,
you see, today's young people, if you're living in a hole in the wall somewhere, you can still hear a compact disc and hear a gorgeous sound. I had no idea what sound was. I had gramophone records of, with 78 revolutions that hardly made the comparable sound of what the Musikverein in Vienna, which is, I think, very close to your hall here, sounded with the Vienna Philharmonic playing. So that was the opening of my ears. And that sound is still impressive to me.
Yes.
It was just not the first sound in Europe. It was the best.
You tried to create the Viennese sound all your career, as I understand it.
When you grow up in Vienna, you grow up with certain accent. Let me explain that. As you have accents in languages, you have an accent in music. A Viennese orchestra playing Johann Strauss has a definite, what you call a lilt. But that lilt is like an accent in a language.
In Vienna, you had a wonderful professor named Professor
Swarovski.
And I think he taught you how to use your wrist in conducting and not flail your arms like a wild man.
He was technically
very
clear and correct. And he says, look, later on you can do whatever you want, but you've got to learn to signal the orchestra in a clear fashion. After all, conducting is communication. If you don't communicate clearly, there are 100 musicians whose lives have to be made simple, not complicated. They have enough complications. They have to play their instruments, plus somebody making them obstacles before them doesn't help.
And I think he taught you how to analyze the handwriting, as he put it, of the great composers.
Yes.
How do you analyze the handwriting of Mozart?
Handwriting means not in the sense that, not reading his letters.
No, I understand his compositions.
Yes. Mozart has written, for instance, let's take Mozart.
Yes.
Has written quartets. His major output, chamber music, piano concertos, and operas. Then he has written violin music, or he's written, choral music, but his main output has been chamber music, piano concertos, and opera. And there is a link between his works. And if you know the complete music of these three categories at least, you learn. And what the handwriting is, what did he write in Cherubino's aria in Marriage of Figaro, which is akin to the opening maybe of the G minor symphony of Mozart, which is like probably the third movement of a quartet. Where and which period did he write these works in? What was he influenced by? What were the embellishments that he put into one piece that he left out of another? After all, his composition was so prolific that his music and his musical thought did seep from one piece into the other. And it is very important that we, the conductors, know the stylistic differences, you see. When you take an art historian, a man who restores paintings, they know every leaf of Botticelli, right?
Yes.
When you go to our museums, when you talk to the curators, or when you go to Florence, when they clean a painting by Botticelli and they suddenly find one flower that they hadn't seen before, they know, my God, it's amazing, but they know it's by Botticelli and they know it is not by somebody else. But if it were by somebody else, these art historians are so perfect in their knowledge, they know exactly that this couldn't have been, that this painting of John the Baptist child is not Raphael, it's by the school of Raphael, etc. We in music are not as developed, really. There is, for instance, a violin concerto that we still can't put our finger on whether it's Mozart or not. And yet, when we are performing it, I know these 4 bars cannot be by anybody else but Mozart. And suddenly we go out into a phrase and say, that's no way, that's Mozart. So we have to know what you call, or what Swarovski used to call, the handwriting of the composer. And we are striving. This study is not over yet.
You're famous for memorizing all your scores. Do you still do that?
Not all of them.
Really? But you used to memorize all of them as a student.
I memorize that music which I know will stay with me all my life. That which I have to study, which I know will land up in a drawer somewhere, I don't memorize.
I see. As a young man, you went off to Liverpool and you won a competition and you were hired there. I guess that was your first job as assistant conductor for the Liverpool,
the first prize
Royal Liverpool Philharmonic. But it didn't go well. Apparently the conductor, John Pritchard, couldn't give you what you needed from him. Why was that? What went wrong?
Well, he had no communication with me
Really?
as an assistant, and I needed it. I'm so glad I was assistant there, that I know with my assistants how to treat them, how to communicate with them myself. The day I arrived in Liverpool to take up my job, I was given the job of, in the next 2 days, to rehearse Schoenberg's Variations, which is an extremely difficult piece,
Yes.
Ein Heldenleben of Strauss, and Elgar's Second Symphony. Well, I should have been prepared for. I had just brought my family to Liverpool. I had hardly found a house. And the next morning I was supposed to rehearse Schoenberg's Variations, which is still today one of the hardest pieces for orchestra. And that was not fair. And then I was given programs to do with one rehearsal, very difficult programs. And I would be nervous doing those programs today, having the experience I have. In those days, I didn't know how to allocate the time for the different pieces.
Yes. So you spent a lot of time on the train going up to Manchester, where your father was living, working as a violinist in the orchestra.
Yeah, he would help me.
Yes, and Sir John Barbaroli was there,
Yeah.
and he was very kind to you, I
In the end, you know,
understand.
it was unfortunate, because then I really attended John Barbaroli's rehearsals. I sat at his feet for most of his rehearsals and didn't really show up in Liverpool. And so things didn't go well.
So you left Liverpool, you went back to Vienna, you took a wife and a child, and then a second child was born, a son, you had no job, no money. Was that the low point of your life, do you think?
Economically, yes.
Economically?
Yeah. I wouldn't say spiritually, because I was always positive. I never remember being depressed, because there is a wonderful European organization called the Jeunesse Musicale, youth in music, musical youth. And they produce concerts of their own. They have a certain government subsidy. They engage, let's say, the Vienna Symphony, and they give chances to young conductors. And the Austrian Jeunesse Musicale gave me 2 or 3 concerts. And the success of those concerts was such that I was then invited by the societies in Vienna to conduct.
And then Stokowski arranged for you to conduct the Philadelphia Orchestra and
Not
the New York
quite.
Philharmonic? No?
Not quite.
Oh, I have it wrong then. What happened?
We had the same manager.
Yes.
And this manager was a crafty old German gentleman. And he told the Robin Hood Dell in Philadelphia, that's the summer season, that if they wanted Stokowski, they have to take this young Indian conductor too.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he
Very
blackmailed
clever.
them. Yes.
But it worked out well for
It
you.
worked out quite well. I did this concert in Philadelphia with, I mean, one wouldn't refer to it now, but it was such a rave that it reached the eyes of a manager of the Montreal Symphony whom I had never met. And as soon as the conductor in Montreal cancelled, the manager remembered this review from Philadelphia and called me.
Yes,
and that's how everything started.
Yes, and you later became music director in Montreal.
Yeah.
But before that, you went back to Vienna, you met Bruno Walter. There was always a conductor taking you in hand, it seemed.
Well,
And
I would search them out.
Really?
And I never made the mistake of asking them favors. As soon as I see a young conductor approaching me today, I know he wants something from
Yes.
me. But I never asked them to even give me a letter of recommendation. I asked them musical questions.
You learned Mahler from Walter. So it's
Yes,
been
I
said.
studied
What did
the
you learn
Mahler
about
First
Mahler
Symphony.
from him?
I learned about the man more than the... He took me through the score.
Yes.
He showed me a lot of musical suggestions that I had asked for. But he told me about the man. He told me about how Mahler visited him. Oh, he visited Mahler when he was when Mahler was composing the Third Symphony in the mountains south of Salzburg. They're called Mountains of Death. And he said he got out of the train, and Mahler came to greet him at the railway station. As a young colleague, Mahler was already quite established in those days. And he mentioned to him the beauty of these mountains. He said, "Oh, don't worry, they are all in my first movement."
Oh, really?
Things like that he would tell
Yes.
me. Which,
And so you see those mountains now when you conduct
oh,
Mahler.
well, yeah, the first movement of Mahler's Third Symphony is completely dedicated to nature. It's the God Pan beholding these mountains south of Salzburg.
Well, of course, there were many conductors who befriended you. Metropolis was another. He tried to get you to take a job as an assistant, and you said no. And then Bernstein offered you the job as his assistant, and you refused. Were you tempted at all?
Yes, very much so. In fact, I applied to Bernstein to be his assistant. By the time I got the letter that, yes, please come as assistant, I had received so many little guest conducting engagements, not important, but they were conducting engagements, that I went to Metropolis in Vienna and I said, "Look, you've just been through music directorship in New York. What shall I do?" And he says, "It's better that you go to the north of Norway and to the south of Yugoslavia and conduct those orchestras. It's better than going to New York and just being an auditing assistant, just a listener."
But then things all came together for you. You were music director in Montreal, music director in Los Angeles. You played for the Royal Philharmonic in London. You conducted there. You conducted the Berlin Philharmonic. You conducted the Israel Philharmonic. And you were only 24 years old. Was that too much for someone so young?
I was mainly in Montreal and Los Angeles. I divided my time almost equally. I really stayed in those two cities, and I feel I developed. I learned my scores for the first time. Both orchestras were so wonderful, with an inexperienced conductor who meant well, and I took the advice from the players. I had marvelous, experienced players in both orchestras that would give me very well-deserved advice. I would go then, of course, to Berlin, Vienna, and London for one concert a season. So I really stayed in those two cities.
And when you went to New York, there were those who said you were going to be the next Toscanini. And yet there were also critics who said that you were one of the few conductors of your generation who didn't imitate Toscanini. So how do you
nobody imitates, really. Toscanini's philosophy in resurrecting the classics that used to be completely distorted by his contemporaries, this philosophy has never left me, of being as true to the music as possible, to really look in. And that's what my teacher taught me also. When my teacher used to analyze scores in our class, we thought we were sitting next to the composer who was composing the piece at the moment. It was made that fresh and it was that analytical for us. And that is what I've tried to continue.
Well, you've had the longest tenure of any conductor in New York, isn't that true?
Yeah, it seems to be.
Yes.
In fact, when I open this season on the 12th of September, it will be my 1000th concert.
Incredible.
And that's a lot of music.
You have said that New York would be your last job, but surely that's not true.
For the moment, yes.
Really?
I'm still continuing my tenure in Israel.
Of course,
But
Israel,
I would like to move more towards Europe.
Of course, you have loved conducting opera. I remember
Yes.
reading once you said that Aida is a wonderful opera. There's no fat there. It functions perfectly. Is it your favorite opera?
I wouldn't say that. Verdi is certainly a favorite operatic composer, like Mozart and like Wagner. These three giants I can live all my life with, operatically speaking.
You know, I've had the feeling, right or wrong, that Tristan and Isolde is the opera that really shows the orchestra off to best advantage. I'm no musician, but is there any truth in that?
Well, I suppose from Tannhäuser or Lohengrin, every opera of Wagner is really a symphonic masterpiece. There's no doubt about it. Tristan is chamber music in that sense. Tristan is not as showy as, for instance, the Funeral March of Götterdämmerung, as the Bacchanal from Tannhäuser. Tristan is as intimate in the pit as it is on the stage, in, of course, a very exotic manner. His intimacy doesn't involve a few instruments. His tonality doesn't involve simplicity either. But to conduct or to go through an experience of Tristan and Isolde is every evening when you conduct it, you have gone through a life's experience. There's no doubt about it.
You got into some trouble in Israel playing Wagner. How did that go? Did you finally have to give up playing Wagner in Israel? Was it too upsetting to the people there?
It didn't go well, and I had to give it up, yes. Well, one has to talk a little bit about the background of that. It's not that the Israelis are against Wagner's music. And an Israeli music lover loves Wagner, there's no doubt about it. But there are people in Israel who are still survivors of the death camps, where they were made to hear the music of Wagner through these dreadful loudspeakers. They have now left that behind them. They have come to a new country. They want peace of mind. And to hear that music again brings them back to those emotional conditions. They don't want to do that. One has to understand it. What I did is that I did not force anybody to hear that music. In other words, I didn't program it as part of the evening's program. I finished the concert. I had rehearsed the Prelude and Liebestod of Tristan and Isolde, and I told the public that I'm now going to play these two excerpts from Wagner's opera, and those who would like to leave, to those whom it is very disturbing, I understand perfectly, they can leave, and those who would like to listen as a curiosity can listen, because we are going to play it. I would say 99% of the public had nothing against that. I didn't see anybody leaving either. One person stood up and told me and shouted to me, "You will not play this music." And this I cannot accept, especially in the only democracy in the Middle East. And I said, look, we are a democracy here. We can say what we want. We can also hear what we want. In the orchestra, it's 115 members. Only 2 refused to play it. And they were both members of camps. They just couldn't hear it. And I understood, and I excused them. They also didn't intrigue against this thing. They said, fine, play it. We just don't want to be part of it. So, because Israel is a country where debate is a way of life, as soon as this one person says to me that I may not play it, other people replied. And therefore this riot ensued. And had I started with Meister Singer, which is a big, robust beginning, I think it would have died down. But Tristan's prelude is very intimate for about 5 minutes almost. And we kept on playing this very quiet music, and people were rioting behind us. One person came up to the stage and grabbed the concertmaster's arm and, to restrict him from playing. And the concertmaster hit him with his bow. It got out of hand. But I didn't stop. I went on, and of course then it flowers into this incredible climax and the Liebestod, and it ended with a huge victory, sort of for us. But the next evening when I started playing it, nobody said anything in the beginning, but they were prepared. They came, the anti-people came in after the concert and started shouting, and I stopped, because you can't play music really when you can give a political speech when you're heckled, probably, and withstand it, but music you can't play.
No, of course not. Israel seems to mean a great deal to you, and has all along. My word, you made a great effort to get to Israel for the Six-Day War. Do you remember that? I mean, you were flying with munitions and on a crazy air cargo plane. I mean, sort of like the airlift of the Middle East right now. There you were in the middle of all the weaponry.
Yeah. Well, I've grown up. Just as I grew up with Los Angeles, I've also grown up with Israel, with the ups and downs. And it's a young country. People don't realize what a young country it is, and therefore, in many people's opinions, it is making mistakes. It will get out of this doldrum at the moment, I'm quite sure. But that doesn't mean I should stop supporting it. Because it's a democracy, as I mentioned earlier, there are many of its policies I don't agree with myself. But I can say it there. I sit with some of the most radical ministers, and I can voice my opinion. I don't voice it as much outside as I do it inside. And that's the beauty of Israel, that they can afford to take criticism. And I do hope that this present incredible period that we are going through will come out peacefully.
I think I have heard a quote from you that went something like this. You said, always at the right time the idea presents itself, or the opportunity comes. Something guides me, you said. I feel very strongly about this.
Yes.
This protective force over me.
Has happened.
You still feel that, the protective force over you?
Well, I think so. I think so. The decision to leave New York is one of these. It's the latest example. I feel I've done the right thing. It is very important that one listens to one's inside. One has to know exactly what one is capable of. This is what I can do, and that's what I'm going to be the best in. In other words, I did not become a composer.